Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. I'm so glad you've joined us this morning. We have a lot to cover. There are some updates on the East Wing of the White House. Also, a very big story, the race for New York City mayor. We'll be talking about that. Governor Hochul. Boy, just when you think she couldn't embarrass herself more in her endorsement of Mamdani, it happened. And actually, two examples of it. We're going to get to that in just a little bit. Later on in the program, in the 7 o'clock hour, Daniel Cain will be joining us. He's running for Elmira City Court Judge. We've had now, after today's broadcast, all three of the candidates vying for that position. And you can find his interview after the program, right around probably 11, somewhere around there, on YouTube. You'll also be able to find his opponents, Robert Stingling and Jordan York, as well as on our website, WYDCTV.com. Okay. Let's go to some viewer comments, shall we? Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Mark. I see Ms. Hochul gave an interview and said Trump and his followers are taking from the poor and giving to the rich during the government shutdown. And the largest federal workers union calls for the immediate end to the shutdown. We're going to talk about that as well. Thank you, Mark. Also, Minnesota man is under arrest for allegedly offering $45,000 for the death of Pam Bondi. I saw that. That's obviously after the assassination of Charlie Kirk and what has been an uptick of kind of far left violence. It is very scary. A St. Paul, Minnesota man is accused of posting a TikTok video offering to pay a bounty for the murder of U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi. The suspect, identified as Tyler Maxon Avalos, allegedly posted an image of Bondi with a caption that read, "Wanted, Pam Bondi, reward $45,000, dead or alive, preferably dead." An image of the alleged post appears to have a sniper scope dot on the photo of Bondi. The Fox News article said the suspect is also accused of writing, "Cough, cough, when they don't serve us, then what?" on the post. So yes, thank you for bringing that to our attention, Mark. That is an update. A comment from a different viewer. I just got done watching one of the best World Series games in the history of baseball, and they were kind enough to send in waves. That was at 2:53 a.m. Yes, it was an 18-inning classic that you could watch right here on Big Fox. I'm assuming this viewer that was still kind enough to send in a wave may not be joining us this morning if the game did not get over until almost 3 a.m. But I appreciate the wait. Excuse me. Ooh. Didn't mean to cough right in the mic. I'm assuming maybe. Well, it depends. But Dodgers won an 18-inning classic Game 3 on a Freddie Freeman walk-off homer to now grab the World Series lead. 18th inning. Did you stay up? Oh, did I add the wave? A couple waves coming in. It was one of the greatest World Series games of all time, said Dodgers manager Dave Roberts, whose team holds a 2-1 series lead. Freeman said, "It's kind of amazing, crazy, and I'm just glad we won." The Dodgers moved within 2 victories of becoming MLB's first repeat champions since the Yankees won 3 straight titles from 1998 to 2000. The Dodgers didn't win the World Series right here, Blue Jays manager John Schneider said. They won a game. Just wanted to clarify that. 18-inning classic. You could watch it right here on Big Fox. You may still be up, and I do appreciate that. That seems like it was a late game. All right, yesterday, Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi said that Japan will donate 250 flowering cherry trees and July 4th fireworks to Washington, D.C. after she and President Trump tuned into the World Series game. I wonder, I can't imagine they watched the whole game. Takaichi, who became Japan's first female prime minister just 7 days ago, emphasized the nation's common love of baseball and our country's historic gift of cherry trees to D.C. as the leaders began their official dialogue yesterday. It was expected to focus behind closed doors on military and trade policies. Takeachi said to the press corps, "I'm very sorry that we kept you waiting. As a matter of fact, Mr. President, and I just enjoyed watching the Major League Baseball match. Actually, Dodgers versus Blue Jays, and the Dodgers are now having a 1-point lead, and we really enjoyed the match." We also learned that the Prime Minister informed President Trump that she nominated him for next year's Nobel Peace Prize, joining a growing list of world leaders. We don't have to rehash that controversy of, we now know your nominations have to be in by, what was it, January 31st? Which doesn't track if you look at President Barack Obama winning the Nobel Peace Prize. That would mean that he was nominated 11 days into his presidency, first term of his presidency. But a White House official told the Post that Takeachi privately told the president she nominated him and presented him with the papers in a surprise move certain to please President Trump. Takeachi unveiled her nomination after the leaders signed documents declaring a golden age of the U.S.-Japan alliance, including affirming a July trade deal, lowering tariffs on Japanese goods to 15%, and pledging cooperation on rare earth and critical minerals in the face of Chinese export restrictions. The contents of Takeachi's nomination letter were not immediately clear, but she publicly praised him for the ceasefire deal he brokered this month between Israel and Hamas. So that's just a short update. There's an interesting piece. We don't have time to get to it, but if you want to see it for yourself, at the New York Post by Daniel McCarthy, saying that Trump inspires a new wave of nationalism from Japan to Argentina, making the claim, MAGA is going global. President Trump's slogan of America First and his movement is all about making America great again. Language the president's foes misunderstand as meaning isolationist, being an isolationist or an isolationism. In fact, strengthening America requires strengthening our friends and allies as well. And Trump sets an example for those leaders in Latin America, Asia, and Europe who want to make their nations great again, too. There's no paradox here. A robust international order is possible if America has to sacrifice. Let me try that again. A robust international order is impossible if America has to sacrifice its own industrial capacity and our people's economic security to global free trade. That leads to a weaker and more dependent America, even as our allies in the era before Trump expected us to shoulder the lion's share of the burdens in their defense. What brings different philosophies together to advance shared interests is simply the art of the deal. Trump's the master of that. And other right-leaning leaders around the world are quickly learning from him. They're advancing a global realignment that will help make America great again, even as it makes their own nations greater as well. Now, yesterday we saw the Dow soar 300 points over what could be a possible China trade deal on rare earths, soybeans, and TikToks. The Dow Jones Industrial Average soared 337 points, while the S&P 500 and NASDAQ rose 1.2 and 1.9% respectively. Trump assured reporters on Air Force One yesterday, "I have a lot of respect for President Xi, and we are going to come away with a deal." So those are a couple of quick updates. We have updates on numerous other issues as well this morning. I don't want to miss out talking about the race for mayor has tightened still. Mamdani with a pretty big lead. But Kathy Hochul making excuses for why Mamdani hasn't endorsed her yet. Also making excuses for that chant where she was heckled at the rally. Yes, she attended a rally for Mamdani on Sunday, even though Mamdani has not endorsed her now twice, saying that, she did not hear tax the rich. She thought they were saying, "Let's go Bills." Tax the rich. Let's go Bills. Cadence is a little off, but that's what she heard. We've got a piece that I think you're really going to enjoy that kind of encompasses what we've been saying about Governor Hochul, because it is very uncomfortable. It's a politician who reached a certain level, kind of like a Kamala Harris, that wasn't meant to be there. Oh, did you see that, by the way? Should I jump ahead? Speaking of Kamala Harris, I wasn't going to do this. But we have two updates on Democrats here. Because yesterday, Kamala Harris kind of signaled, I guess it was on Sunday, that she may run for president again. They asked her something about there being the first female president. She said within her grandnieces, I think it was, lifetimes. And they asked, well, could that president be you? And she said, possibly. Well, we learned that, and this is something we talked about on the show, so we're not surprised. This is exactly how we thought it went down behind the scenes. Former President Barack Obama was not happy with Representative Nancy Pelosi's quick endorsement of then Vice President Kamala Harris. Now, if you recall at the time, we had speculated, without any real background information, but we had speculated because of Obama's late endorsement that he wanted somebody else. I mean, we had been told for 4 years, essentially, even by those on the left, that Kamala Harris wasn't going to be the nominee. She just didn't have it. She wasn't as likable. They wanted maybe a Gavin Newsom, a Josh Shapiro, somebody like that. That it wasn't, Kamala Harris just didn't have it, just like Governor Hochul doesn't have the chops to be governor on the political level. That's why you have the continued embarrassment. But with Kamala, we had speculated that Barack Obama wanted to pick somebody else or have some type of primary. But remember, Joe Biden drops out and then instantly endorses Harris, kind of as his last power move, his last, I'm still a kingmaker, and if you're going to push me out, I'm going to show you that I still have some power and really make it difficult for you to win the presidency. Well, according to a new book, Pelosi described Harris as brilliantly astute and expressed full confidence in Harris that she could defeat President Trump in her endorsement statement, which came less than 24 hours after Joe Biden ended his re-election bid. Obama, who preferred to let a process determine Trump's Democratic opponent, which I think would have really helped the Democrats in the long term, instead of being kind of forced to support Harris. He called Pelosi shortly after her endorsement to vent his frustration, having thought they were on the same page. This is coming from, not a conservative outlet, ABC News' Jonathan Karl, who wrote it in his new book, Retribution. The Obamas were not happy, a Pelosi confidant told Karl. This person summed up Obama's message to Pelosi as essentially, what the blank did you just do? Ooh, that's an awkward phone call. It's been widely reported that the 44th president wanted an open convention to determine the party's nominee rather than anointing Harris after Biden's shocking dropout. Obama reportedly had serious concerns about Harris's competence and her ability to beat Trump in the general election, and I think his concerns were proven. Whether it's the word salads, whether it's some of the decisions she made, like not going on Joe Rogan and other programs. The train has left the station, Pelosi reportedly told Obama during the call. Ooh, she doesn't like getting pushback. Carr wrote that Obama and Pelosi both agreed Harris should not simply be handed the nomination unchallenged. Therefore, Obama and Pelosi, arguably the two most influential figures in the Democrat Party, had privately agreed to abstain from making an endorsement. The pair had been in regular communications leading up to Biden's withdrawal. So it sounded like Nancy Pelosi changed her mind. Sounded like, I can't blame Obama for thinking they were on the same page. A source close to Obama described the former president's conversation with Pelosi as good-natured ribbing rather than heated, according to Karl. The former president wanted to know what had happened. Why had Pelosi issued a statement endorsing Harris so soon? Hadn't he and Pelosi agreed days earlier that party leaders anointing the vice president as Biden's replacement would be a mistake, Karl writes? However, the source close to Pelosi felt Obama sounded genuinely irritated on the call. I could imagine. At least one Biden official believed that Obama, who waited 5 days after the 81-year-old president dropped out to endorse Harris, didn't think the former vice president could win. Like Obama, Pelosi's husband was also surprised by the former House Speaker's decision. Kamala? Paul Pelosi asked his wife, to which Nancy shot back, "Don't start with me." Woo. There you go. In retribution, Karl notes that the big-name Democrats, such as the Clintons and potential challengers like Josh Shapiro, Gavin Newsom, quickly endorsed Harris, and Pelosi had no choice. No other candidate had stepped forward. Kamala Harris was it. The only thing Pelosi could do was try to help her win the election. Tying that in, I know I'm running late, tying that in, since we're talking about Democrats and Kamala Harris signaling that she may run for president again, we learned today that former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is the Democrat Party's early presidential frontrunner in New Hampshire, topping even Gavin Newsom, AOC, and Harris in the poll. With 19% support, Buttigieg leads Newsom, his closest opponent, by 4 percentage points, according to the University of New Hampshire's Granite State poll. The only other Democrats in double digit were Ocasio-Cortez at 14% and Harris at 11%. Yes, AOC is considered a frontrunner, but also considered a viable candidate. I know some may laugh at that. Some may think she's fringe. I think you're doing a disservice to yourself if you laugh at that, because she is going to be included in polls like this. Now, it's just a matter of if she runs for Senate, either against Chuck Schumer or if Chuck Schumer decides to retire, one or the other. So it's either she runs for Senate or, as many have speculated, president. But poor J.B. Pritzker, trying to make a name for himself by cussing out Trump, by trying to be the leader of the resistance, receiving just a 6% backing in New Hampshire. Bernie Sanders, even at his advanced age, received 8%, so more than J.B. Pritzker. New Hampshire traditionally is the first state to hold both Democrat and Republican presidential primary contests. So Buttigieg in first, Newsom second, AOC third, and Harris fourth. Rounding out 5 with Bernie Sanders, 6, J.B. Pritzker. On that note, let's take a short break. Wow, waves are coming in. Wildfire. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street. Comment from a viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. So Hochul had a Let's Go Brandon moment. This comedy writes itself. Yes. And so you've got that, which is already embarrassing. And we know she heard Let's Go Bills instead of Tax the Rich. They don't even have the same cadence. At least you could make the argument Let's Go Brandon, maybe, as compared to what they were saying, which I cannot actually say. So she heard that. Also, when they asked, well, isn't it kind of embarrassing that Mahmadani refuses to endorse you after you endorsed him and have been doing rallies with him? And remember, it's been at least twice that he hasn't. One was at the very visual debate where they were asked to raise their hand and no one raised it. He didn't raise it. So he would not endorse Hochul, which also signals that the whole reason I believe she endorsed him originally was to keep a far-left primary challenger. I think that might be off the table. But her excuse now is, no. We want to do it on Zoran's time. He wants to wait. He wants the perfect time to do it. So it's my fault that he hasn't endorsed. That debate proves that null and void, doesn't it? Because, yeah, maybe it would be fine if he endorsed her during that debate as compared to what? A couple months into next year? Come on. What a pathetic excuse. We got to run through a couple quick things here. Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's organization, tried to form a chapter at Loyola University in New Orleans. It has been denied by student government. So when you hope that that tragedy could maybe heal and maybe start opening free speech on college campuses, this sends up a huge red flag. Breaking, Turning Point USA was denied the ability to charter as an organization affiliated with Loyola University, New Orleans, at the October 15th Student Government Association Senate meeting. The denial means the chapter will not have access to school resources, including reserving space for campus events. However, a Milwaukee-based left-wing blog called Fight Back describes itself as not neutral or even-handed in our coverage. Appears to have covered the October 15th Student Government Association meeting where the SGA Senate denied Turning Point's ability to charter or become an official organization. Okay. According to Fight Back News, one student said Turning Point's values do not comport with the school's Jesuit Catholic values. Interesting. Anyway, Just keep that in mind. And then there was a lot of lies being pushed about Charlie Kirk and his values and Turning Point USA values. I don't want to read all of those, but just something to keep in mind that the struggle continues for free speech on campus. As a matter of fact, conservatives at Harvard say they fear social shunning, academic retaliation over their right-wing beliefs, that the campus is hostile to their ideas. Now, that should come as no surprise when you have a president of Harvard who is willing to take a pay cut to show solidarity and support for the anti-Semitic protesters on his campus. A student who spoke on the condition of anonymity described feelings of unbelonging and experiences that undermine the idea that the school community is tolerant of all political ideologies. A good example of this would be something like the university is very strict on not co-sponsoring events with outside groups when it comes to the Republican Club. Let's say trying to put on an event, one student said. But the Democrats very often get away with doing that, no question asked. The student also described that they believe to be selective enforcement of campus rules when it comes to right-wing events on campus. There have been other things like the Republican Club puts on a big event and they send a bunch of administrators to really strictly enforce, fire code rules, making sure that the audience is sitting properly in their seats, whereas Democrats can host events and the whole place can be jam-packed and there's no concern whatsoever. And of course we know that, unfortunately, that it's the grown-ups in the room as well. So yes, academic retaliation from the far left faculty and staff who are essentially in a bubble where they're surrounded by yes people, the students who have to adhere to their every word, so they're not used to getting any pushback. So when they do, they act like children. We saw that during some of the protests. But since we mentioned Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk is doing her first TV sit-down interview since the killing of her husband, Charlie Kirk, and she's doing it with Jesse Waters. The channel announced this yesterday, and it will air on Jesse Waters primetime a week from Wednesday, so a week from tomorrow on November 5th at 8 p.m. Waters will go behind the scenes with Mrs. Kirk at Turning Point USA's Arizona headquarters, as well as This is the Turning Point tour, stop at the University of Mississippi in Oxford on Wednesday, October 29th. Jesse Waters Primetime will be live on the Ole Miss campus for the event, which includes Mrs. Kirk introducing Vice President J.D. Vance, who will debate and take student questions throughout the night. Wow. That'll be a powerful event, won't it? With J.D. Vance attending and answering questions, and he's great at it. Anecdotally, I saw him once, and the way he answered press questions was remarkable. And it was in Williamsport. And I'm not just talking the national stuff that he's heard a million times. Someone asked about dairy farming in the Williamsport area, and he had an answer, and a legitimate answer to it. So that should be a very interesting event. One last thing, because it ties in. Anxious and disillusioned, according to the Financial Times. Who was anxious and disillusioned? Being young in Trump's America. Students in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, where the Financial Times is reporting over the next few years, reflects the angst of peers across the U.S. Yes, it's all because of Trump and the blame factor there of everything being Trump's fault. So they feel anxious and disillusioned. All right. Let's take a short break, and it's time to talk about the East Wing of the White House. Then we will talk a lot about Hochul, because I know you're going to be interested to hear exactly what she had to say about the non-endorsement, exactly what she said about that champ, what that race is starting to look like with early voting. They don't count, but to get an idea of what the early voting looks like, we'll tell you about that. And we got quite a few other issues as well. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Let's talk a little bit about the East Wing, shall we? It is a major story. On Laura Trump's show, she blasted Representative Eric Swalwell. I had mentioned this yesterday, saying that it proved my prediction that the next time a Democrat gets into the White House, depending on the relationship to Trump's presidency, they will tear down the ballroom as one last kind of gesture of Trump derangement syndrome, if you will. And then Eric Swalwell came in to confirm what I'd been saying, suggesting a litmus test for Democrat presidential candidates that they will have to agree to tear down the ballroom. Just waste. I know it's privately funded money. You wouldn't know that if you're watching the news, that the $300 million is coming from private donations. They want you to believe that it's taxpayer. They won't come out and say it, but they want you to be confused, misled. So he just wants to tear that down. Laura Trump said it's ridiculous. We all know that. And everybody should be happy about this ballroom. But of course, that's Eric Swalwell. That is true. It's almost like you expect that from him. He's always looking for something that he thinks is a lot more clever than it is. But did you see in the media, CNN staffers were shocked and really even appalled when their boss urged them to ease up on covering President Trump's demolition of the East Wing. And that came right after CNN's exec paid a rare visit to the White House. Now, if you watch the coverage, number one, it was misleading. Number two, they like showing that graphic of it being demolished because they want to almost present it in a way that you start to think that it's actual pieces of the original White House. We've talked about the misleading nature in the media and by politicians on this from the beginning. But CNN head Mark Thompson told staffers on an editorial call Thursday of last week that CNN's viewership isn't all that interested in the story. Staffers reportedly took the comment from Thompson, who usually avoids getting into the weeds of editorial decisions, as bizarre. CNN journalists were also said to be suspicious of the timing because that came right as Trump rapidly cleared the way for a $300 million ballroom where the East Wing used to be. Staffers reportedly left wondering what coverage might be discouraged next. The Warner Brothers Discovery-owned news channel pushed back on the report from the Status newsletter over the weekend, saying there is zero truth to the reporting. This is reckless and irresponsible conjecture without any fact-checking prior to the publication. But the network representative did confirm that Thompson visited the White House on Wednesday. According to Status, Thompson was at the White House to introduce the network's new direct-to-consumer streaming product, which is set to launch next week. It was not immediately known whom he met there. Thompson, the former BBC and New York Times head who was tapped by WBD CEO David Zaslav to lead the struggling cable net channel out of the ratings wilderness, wants to adopt a big tent approach to programming the new streaming service. So there you are. CNN's boss orders less coverage, to ease up on the coverage, even though that obviously plays right into the hands of CNN viewers. Not the majority of viewers who are stuck at an airport watching CNN, but the ones that actually tune into CNN for news. That would have played right to their base, but maybe a little different change of pace, just like we're seeing at CBS now. But this is awkward. MSNBC, far left MSNBC, their left-wing hosts and guests have been forced to disclose that the cable network's parent company, Comcast, donated to President Trump's planned White House ballroom. In the same breath, they've been lambasting the plans, some calling it really just a picture of what the Trump administration looks like, destruction of our history, and proving that he is not going to leave after his term. Stephanie Ruhle, MSNBC anchor, said, here's the issue. Donors are paying for it. Corporations are paying for it. Comcast, our Comcast, is one of those that are underwriting it. Shouldn't that be more concerning to the American people? Because there ain't no company out there writing a check just for goodwill. So not even Stephanie Ruhle's own company. Comcast is one of the several Fortune 500 companies that have donated towards the construction of the new $300 million ballroom. While Comcast CEO Brian Roberts has been criticized by Trump, the Philadelphia-based telecom giant is reportedly interested in buying Warner Brothers Discovery amid bidding talks that stand to reshape America's media landscape. The Trump administration has been smiling on rival bidder Paramount Skydance instead. Frequent MSNBC guest David Frum told Nicole Wallace last week, everyone who is giving the money, the $250 million to pay for this thing, with all due respect to Comcast, thank you for your hospitality, is doing so in expectation of something in return. They're not doing it for the love of ballroom dancing. That's an awkward disclaimer. on ABC. Well, it was on MSNBC, but it was ABC News chief, Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl, who we mentioned that book a little bit earlier on. He was asked by Nicole Wallace, Donald Trump right now, I think polls have been from about 34%. I don't know if there's one that's current that has them at 41, but he's as unpopular as he's ever been. He just demolished the East Wing of the White House. They got about a less than 20% approval rating. I mean, it really divides his whole coalition of people who voted for him less than 1 year ago. You work in that building. You worked in that building for a long time. What is your sense of whether or not anybody has any idea just how symbolic that single act is for all the things people hate about him, even some of the people that voted for him? So here's your weekly example, and sometimes we have it more than once a week. Here's your weekly example that MAGA supporters, Trump supporters, are now losing their support. They don't support Trump this time. What is it this time? Yes, the demolition of the East Wing. So if you are a Trump supporter, is this what has changed your view on Trump? You were all in before. Tariffs, everything else that Trump has been doing. But the demolition of the East Wing is just a bridge too far. And now you will vote for, well, according to the polls, Pete Buttigieg. Perhaps Gavin Newsom. If we are to understand Nicole Wallace's line of reasoning, but as you know, on this program, I've highlighted numerous times that that's about once, sometimes more, a week, where there's some reason why Trump supporters no longer support him. Jonathan Karl said, well, it's certainly symbolic of how he's approaching his second presidency. It's first of all, the rules don't matter. Look, he have the planning commission. He's got to have the planning commission. I sometimes think they use AI to take quotes. That would technically be responsible for overseeing new construction at the White House, but not deconstruction. I mean, not destroying part of the White House. But now they're gone. They've been replaced. All the Biden appointees have been pushed aside. All the Biden appointees have been pushed aside. What president doesn't do that? Can I ask that? Was there a lot of Trump appointees in the Biden administration when he got in? It's all Trump appointees, and he just went through it and did it. So it's a metaphor for I do what I want to do. But it's also a metaphor for the kind of change he is making. He is making changes that will far outlast his presidency. Well, that's for sure. Princeton professor Eddie Glad Jr., who's on MSNBC's Deadline. So apparently MSNBC has not been told to ease up on their coverage of the East Wing Ballroom. He was asked by Nicole Wallace, Eddie, the whole conversation of the whole hour, actually the whole 2 hours, and not just about remaking the country in service of Donald Trump's retribution and revenge, which sounded petty at the beginning. It's now all-consuming. But now it's like a fire burning through the actual structure of the White House. Glad said, absolutely, absolutely. You know what Jonathan Karl said last hour? He said that Donald Trump's revenge list is made up of folks who tried to cancel him. And by building this 90,000 square foot ballroom, you can't cancel that. Well, Eric Swalwell's calling for it. He's going to imprint his revenge on the people's house. He's going to imprint himself on the bureaucratic infrastructure. He's going to remake government in the image of himself. And interestingly enough, it will take generations for us to undo it. So the folks who tried to cancel, they will not take another breath before it's undone. And so, we face a moral choice with political implications in this country. We have for over a decade, and we have not chosen well. We're dealing with the consequences day in and day out. So it's revenge on the people's house. And again, apparently, according to Nicole Wallace, if you are a Trump supporter, that was probably enough for you to no longer support Trump. I've got one other thing on this. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. Comment from a viewer. We were wondering if you could put on the screen the copy of the ballot for who is running and what they are running for in Cain and at the county seat. We have no idea who and what they are running for. Thank you. Keep up the good work. Have a wonderful, great day. Well, thank you. You too have a wonderful, great day. I can't, it's kind of difficult to live in a program put something up on the screen if I haven't prepared in ahead. You don't have that many races in Cain. I'd be more than happy to read them for you right now. You have to vote for 2 county coroners, and that they are both Republican. It's Brian May and Robert Cole. Okay, so that's for coroner. Then for the county that you were asking about, county legislator, that's District 13 that you're in, you have the Democrat Timothy Tuttle, and then and he's also on the Neighbors Unity line. So Timothy Tuttle on Democrat and Neighbors Unity line. And then on the Republican and conservative line, you have Justin Eberlin. You may recall we interviewed Justin Eberlin back during the primary because there was a primary challenge there. So he is on the Republican and conservative line, and that is for your county legislator. For your council members, on the Republican line, you have, and you get to vote for two. On the Republican line, you have Tammy Marsh and Lindsey Larson. They're on the Republican line. And on the conservative line, Scott Condon. Again, you have two of those people that you can select. And then there's the Supreme Court justices. You vote for two. The Democrats and judicial integrity lines are taken by David Sagunza and Darius Lind. And on the Republican line, Joe D'Onofrio and Kristen Kitty Carl. So there you are. I hope that helped. If anybody else has any questions about their vote, it is early voting, so we're more than happy to help. I'm sorry I couldn't put that up on the screen in a timely fashion, but if you have any more questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, Glenn Reynolds is a professor of law at the University of Tennessee. And he writes, President Donald Trump has done it again. He sent the left and the media, but I repeat myself, down a rabbit hole of absurdity. It's like the media is a cat and Trump has the world's biggest laser pointer, Marco Cleveland posted on X. That's a great way of putting it. With it currently aimed at the new ballroom. That's right. While Trump tours Asia, dancing, making trade deals, and apparently having a blast, he's got his opponents back in the swamp obsessing over a home renovation project. Using donated funds, not taxpayer money, and again, I think it's very important to reiterate that, because the media will not. Trump is rebuilding the White House's shabby East Wing, originally added to cover up construction of a bomb shelter during World War II, to create a large and modern space that meets the needs of today's presidency. Naturally, this has the usual gangs of idiots fuming. That's Glenn Reynolds' words, not mine. Representative Eric Swalwell lectured his fellow Democrats not to even imagine running for president unless they pledge to take a wrecking ball to Trump's renovation. The funniest thing about this is not that Swalwell posted it, but that he thought it was so brilliant that he reposted it. Talk show host Joe Walsh, who once pretended to be a Republican, took up Swalwell's demand, saying, I'll say it every day for the next 3 years. Any Democrat running for president in 2028 must pledge to tear down Trump's ballroom. It matters. Now, does it? Does it really matter? It's hilarious to see such reactions from Democrats like these, along with Joe Scarborough, Stephanie Ruhle, and other very serious people, to a project that enriches our national infrastructure and won't cost taxpayers a dime. Those who a couple of years ago were toppling monuments to America's founders and denouncing America itself as a slave state are now posing as defenders of our deep history and heritage. Because nothing says deep history and heritage like a structure built in 1942 to hide a bomb shelter. Trump's new White House annex will contain a lot more space, including a huge ballroom with a drone-proof metal roof and other security enhancements. Up to now, big state dinners have been held in tents on the White House lawn with portable space heaters, awkward temporary restrooms, and zero overhead protection against security threats like drones, which are becoming a bigger and bigger danger. The new building will make formal receptions and other big events safer and more comfortable. Even some of the left are jumping ship on this ridiculous outcry against an addition that many, including Biden and Obama staffers, have publicly advocated. The Washington Post, no friend of Trump's, editorialized in favor of the renovation, while complaining about the way he's going to do it. In classic Trump fashion, the president is pursuing a reasonable idea in the most jarring manner possible, the paper exclaimed. But it went on, it is absurd that tents need to be erected on the South Lawn for state dinners and VIPs are forced to use porta potties. And Trump's rapid construction program contrasts sharply with many other D.C. area projects mired in the usual slog of permitting, environmental reviews, and not in my backyard complaints from the perpetually aggrieved. Trump's undertaking is a shot across the bow at NIMBYs everywhere, not my backyard. Even Black Lives Matter activist Shaun King is on board, saying they're always wasting millions on tents and heaters and chairs and lights and everything else. Stop acting like you have some emotional attachment to the East Wing. You don't. But most of the leftists have to pretend that they care, that they are acting as if he's tearing down the actual White House. If Trump is for it, a large segment of the country just has to be against it. And in the most overwrought, over-moralizing way. They just can't help themselves. Thus, when Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. promoted a Harvard study suggesting a link between consuming Tylenol and pregnancy and autism in children, pregnant Democrat women started posting TikTok videos of themselves gobbling the tablets. That'll show Trump. Some reportedly wound up in the emergency room, but resisting Trump was more important. It's been a long-standing joke on the right that if Trump gave a speech praising oxygen, beautiful oxygen, people on the left would cover their heads with plastic bags. And that's not far from the truth. All this programmed hysteria does keep a certain segment of the crazy leftist base riled up in a state of excitement that Democrat leadership relies on for donations and votes. But it seems they're usually riled up about what Trump wants them to be. That is, things that make them look stupid and get them chasing that laser dot around in circles. I thought that was a great piece, tying it all in together. Stay with us. We got to take a break. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio here on Market Street in Power. Market Street in Corning, sorry. Sometimes look ahead at headlines and it messes me up. Let's go to some viewer comments, shall we? Given that the left-leaning media has and is pushing the narrative that Trump and MAGA supporters are turning against the president, and they do push that, I think that, come Election Day, this narrative will backfire. It will lead Democrat voters into a false sense that they, or any Democrat, will win enough votes to win, and they will therefore stay home on Election Day. There could be that. I think there is going to be a lot of focus on Mamdani and if he wins and by how much he wins by. There is, with the No Kings rally and the various protests day in and day out, there is some excitement with the base, but does that lead to going, especially at a year that's a very localized election season, will that translate at the local level? That's yet to be seen. Now, midterms, I think you raise a really good point on midterms because we have a whole another year of campaigning and so much will change. But as of right now, and we'll have the governor, et cetera, et cetera. So there'll be a lot there to energize people. But I think it will be, whether it's a New Jersey race, whether it's the mayor's race in New York City, there will definitely be some telling signs of what's to come in the midterm. All right, comment from a different viewer. I just saw Schumer on television saying that President Trump should be here during the shutdown. Schumer doesn't have the power he used to have, that's for sure. That is for sure. And he's the one that started to shut it down. It's up to him, not the president. Thank you. You're exactly right. It's not, and the media can't even deny that any longer. I was shocked at one of the headlines. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the program. But one of the headlines didn't even go out of its way to just try to blame Republicans, and it was at CNN too. It was Democrats not swayed by call to end shutdown from largest federal workers union. Now, that piece has two meanings. One, it is telling Democrats, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you better stay strong on this. We just reported that it's not changing your opinion, even though a major union told you to stop with the partisanship. But the fact that they put the onus on Democrats is very telling that it is accepted in most circles that it is the Democrats. I know the media tries to lie to you. The people will lie to you on Facebook saying, well, Republicans have the majority. Why isn't the government open? Hoping that you don't know your facts, hoping that you aren't a student of this, and of course you are, that with the filibuster, Schumer is the one, because we don't have 60 Republican votes, is the one keeping the government shut down. And he doesn't have the power he has anymore. He's not given the megaphone he once had. I'm not saying the media doesn't cover him, but now that he has been mocked and ridiculed as not just basically, he's aged out of being a leader in today's resistance Democrat Party, in the Mamdani's, AOC's party, Hakeem Jeffries, all trying to be the leader of the resistance, and Schumer has been aged out of that. and just cannot handle it. So his power is diminished, and he's just not getting the coverage he once had. I mean, even Jon Stewart mocking him. He always goes there to read a statement with his glasses right there. He just does not look like the leader of something called the Resistance. Okay, we got to take a short break, and then we're going to wrap up hour number 1. Where's the time going? Don't forget, in the next hour, Daniel Cain will be our guest. He is running for Elmira City Court Judge. If anybody has questions about their ballot, like that one viewer, I would love to help. I hope that was helpful. But we'll try to let you know who your candidates are so you can be prepared for either early voting going on now or for next Tuesday. Stay with us. We'll be right back, getting ready to wrap up hour number 1. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio here on Market Street in Corning. I got a couple comments. Sorry, I'll read them at the top of the hour. A couple of quick things to wrap up this hour. Aaron Blake at CNN writes, why Trump needs to keep the third term talk going, because the media is making this big deal about Trump, joking about Trump 2028. They keep asking him, and he keeps teasing them, and I mean, they just play right into his hand. So the whole thing goes, the argument is, in their mind, he has to do it because otherwise he's going to be a lame duck soon. And if he doesn't, then he'll lose all his power. So they're encouraging him to continue, I guess. So what Trump and allies like Bannon are effectively doing is planting a seed in people's mind that says, what if you don't actually know he'll be gone come January 2029? That doesn't mean this is a serious proposal. It strains credulity how Trump would ever make this a reality, even if he wanted to. But we're probably doomed to keep hearing about it for as long as the notion is useful for Trump. Well, no, as long as the media gets themselves worked up into a lather because they're so upset because he keeps saying it. Sonny Hoiston on The View says Trump is most definitely going to try to remain on the power. Last week, speaking to The Economist, Steve Bannon said, well, he's got to get a third term. So Trump, 28. Trump is going to be president in 28, and people just sort of get accommodated with that. Now, Monday on Air Force One, Trump says, I haven't really thought about it. We have some very good people, as you know, but I have the best poll numbers I've ever had. I would love to do it. Hoiston said the 22nd Amendment is so clear. You learn in law school no president can run twice. Many people who say there's no way he could do it. Well, those are the same people that said the Supreme Court is never going to get rid of Roe v. Wade. Those are the same people that said things like he's not going to have these masked men disappearing people all over the country. Those are the same people that said, oh my goodness, are you kidding? He's never going to get rid of the Rose Garden. He's never going to get rid of the East Wing. Did people ever say that? Was that even a point of conversation at any point? He's done everything that people thought he would never do. I actually have come to the conclusion that he is most definitely going to try to remain in power. Because remember, that East Wing, it takes a long time to build that. He is hooking up that White House because he doesn't plan on leaving it. So she's using that cliche argument, that trite argument that the ballroom is just a symbol of him clinging on to power after 2028. By the way, though, that ignores the fact that Trump said yesterday on Air Force One that Vance-Rubio ticket in 2028 would be unstoppable. We have JD, obviously, the vice president is great. As Rubio stood behind Trump and shook his head in agreement. Marco is great. I'm not sure if anybody would run against those two. I think if they ever formed a group, it would be unstoppable. I really do. I believe that. I would love to do it. I had my best numbers ever, though. He kept that in the back. But saying, JD Vance and Rubio, unstoppable. All right. We're going to talk the mayoral race when we come back. Hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2, moments away. Welcome to hour number 2 as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. We have a lot of viewer comments to get to. Coming up in this hour, don't forget, we'll be talking with Daniel Cain. He is running for Elmira City Court Judge. We had on his the opponents. That'll mean we had all 3 candidates on the program. Robert Singlin and Jordan York. And today we'll have Daniel Cain. So if you miss those, you can find them on our YouTube page. You can find them on WYDCTV.com. On tomorrow's broadcast, if you have any questions, send them in. We're going to be talking with fan favorite Sheriff Jim Allard from Steuben County. And on Thursday, another fan favorite, former Congressman and current Assemblyman Joe Semplinsky. So we have a very busy week. We have guests for Friday as well. We'll get those when they're set in stone. We'll get those to you, but Friday's going to be a very busy day. Let's go to viewer comments. This viewer writes in, I'm all for President Trump running for vice president and Vance as president. That's one way of doing that, sure. Comment from Steve. He says, good morning, and I say good morning to you, Steve. I wish I could charge rent for how much Trump lives in people's heads, right? I wish he would announce that Rubio or Vance will run for the presidency. Trump would be VP, then they would step down. Imagine how that would make people's heads explode. So you both have that idea. All right. That's something that would cause some consternation. What would happen if Trump said that, this is from a different viewer, what would happen if Trump said that Tylenol treats Trump derangement syndrome? Fair question. I'm not sure. Comment from a different viewer. Regarding the shutdown, correct me if I'm wrong, but during one vote, didn't some nut interrupt the vote by speaking for 22 hours? I don't know if it's called interrupt. It was day 22. This is how irrelevant a lot of their protests have become, because I did not even see coverage of this, not real coverage of it, a little bit. But yes, this was on October 22nd, so last Tuesday into Wednesday. Democrat Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley held the Senate floor protesting what he calls President Trump's grave threats to democracy in the form of a marathon speech. Starting just before 6:30 Tuesday, Senator Merkley's speech ultimately ended at 5 p.m. Wednesday, stretching for 22 and a half hours, one of the longest Senate speeches in U.S. history. And did you even know that? Honestly, I mean, thank you to the viewer. The viewer did. I'm sure I heard it at some point, but I'm not even sure. I had to look it up. I'm in full disclosure. I looked it up because I was thinking maybe there's some confusion there with Cory Booker's, but nope, you were right. That's how little response the resistance gets. Let's talk about, it's about the mayor's race, but there's a lot more subtext here about Governor Hochul and just not being there, right? I mean, to that level of government politics. She's not, whatever you think about Cuomo, and I know for right reasons, a lot of people dislike him, but he knew how to be a governor. Even if you hated his policies, he was a forceful person. Hochul just seems to step in kind of booby traps of her own making, whether it's the blunder on her Democratic National Convention speech, whether it's this endorsement of Mamdani. She's even backing away now, saying that and this could be good news. I wouldn't get too happy about it, but in reference to some of the failed green policies she's been forcing on New Yorkers. So we're going to talk about her in just a second. But first, Andrew Cuomo has narrowed the gap against Zohran Mamdani in that mayoral race, with ex-Governor Andrew Cuomo cutting frontrunner Zohran Mamdani's lead in half from a month ago. Still means that Zohran leads handily. Mamdani now leads the independent Cuomo just 44 to 34% among likely Big Apple voters, according to Suffolk University. The new survey margin is considerably tighter than the 20-point lead the Democrat Socialist Mamdani had over Cuomo in the last poll conducted back in September. Republican nominee Curtis Sliwa remained in third place, notching 11% support in the recent survey, a haul that could ultimately keep Cuomo from thwarting Mamdani's election, despite the ex-governor's recent gains. There is one person in New York City who voters could have an outsized impact on the outcome. That person is Mayor Eric Adams, Representative Hakeem Jeffries, Senator Chuck Schumer, or any New York billionaire. It's not them. It's Republican Curtis Sliwa, whose voters hold the 11% blocking Cuomo from winning the race. I wonder if this poll was put out in a way to try to force the hands of Sliwa, which is not going to happen, as far as if you listen to what Sliwa has said forcefully over and over again. But this could be, as polling is often done, is to put a pressure campaign, in this case on Sliwa, to back down, saying you will be blamed if Cuomo loses and Sliwa wins. But it was also the second poll to show the former governor narrowing the gap with Mamdani. Cuomo's comeback comes with caveats. Conducted by phoning 500 likely general election voters from Thursday through Sunday, it found a substantial portion of his support actually comes from opposition to Mamdani. Well, I don't think Cuomo cares how he wins it. We're not going to go through all the specific numbers. But the media is trying to paint it as negative if you call out Mamdani for his, and he's proud of it, for his Democrat socialist ideals. And so and the media has done this on so many issues in the past. This is from NBC News. Republicans work to make Zohran Mamdani the face of the Democratic Party. Are Republicans working at that? I mean, Zohran Mamdani has become one of the faces of the Democrat Party. I mean, look at that fundraiser. You had AOC, you had Bernie, you had him, and you even had the moderate, business-friendly Kathy Hochul. That's the piece we had yesterday. Before you're getting mad at me, that was not my words. But it was Politico that called Kathy Hochul a moderate, business-friendly governor. Okay. So you had those four. Now, I'm not saying Hochul is a part of the face of the Republican Party. She is not. But the fact that she was there while the three faces of the Republican Party held the rally, packing in people, it's not us trying to make him the face of the Democrat Party. It's the Democrat Party trying to make him the face of the party. Top Republicans on Monday seized on House Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries' endorsement of Zohran Mamdani, and you may have missed that. That happened over the weekend. Casting the self-described Democrat socialist as the new face of the Democrat Party ahead of next year's midterm elections. House Speaker Mike Johnson called Jeffries' endorsement a seismic shift in policy. We saw our clearest sign yet that this radical insurgent movement in the Democrat Party is succeeding, and they are ending what has always been known as the Democrat Party in America. After a months-long pressure campaign from the far left, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries finally relented. He gave in, and he gave us his endorsement to the socialist running to be mayor of New York City. Johnson's not wrong. I mean, it does show a takeover. But see, the way the media tries to present this is if it's all a right-wing conspiracy. The Zohran's not actually. And they're just doing that because they're nervous about next year's midterms. If he wins, there's a lot of damage that can be done from now till then. They also want to distance themselves from what they know will ultimately be failed policies, though that they like them on paper. The fresh comments are an attempt by GOP leaders to tie all congressional Democrats to Mamdani, hoping to paint the party as too far left heading into next November's House and Senate elections. The popular Muslim American state assemblyman has energized a progressive base, but his calls to raise taxes on the wealthy and support for Palestinians, more anti-Israel, but again, it's NBC, have drawn fire from Republicans and some moderate Democrats. The speaker continuing yesterday saying the House Democrats have chosen a side they were forced to by the far left that they're so terrified of. And they've shown the world that what they really believe. There's no longer a place for centrists and moderates in their party. Speaking alongside Johnson, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise also hammered Jeffries' support for Mamdani, saying Hakeem Jeffries is now all in for the socialist agenda of Mamdani. He is the head of their party now. When he gets elected mayor of New York, he's giving the marching orders to the rest of the Democrats, and they want to raise taxes on everybody. Throughout the news conference, the three top leaders all brought up the word socialist repeatedly. Well, again, he said just yesterday he was proud of that label, Democrat Socialist of America, proud to be a part of that group. So why, again, it's so interesting to me how the media operates, because this would never happen if the shoe was on the other foot. But they are trying to present it as the Democrats are lying, the Republicans are lying about this, that he's not a Democrat socialist, or he's the one probably saying it. He's probably the one giving these speeches and campaigning with AOC, campaigning with Bernie Sanders. So it's very misleading in their coverage. Some key Democrats, including Jeffries' counterpart, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, have not endorsed Mamdani, whose campaign has created headaches for party leaders. At just 34 years old, Mamdani has appealed to a new generation of voters and made affordability a centerpiece of the campaign, but not really, not for taxpayers. It's kind of false affordability. I'd also say that this is quite a bit, the Chuck Schumers of the world are quite a bit to blame for this. When you talk about the older generations that we see that are giving the speeches for the Democrat Party, Schumer, Nancy Pelosi at one time, and then they see Biden, what happened with Biden, and finally having to drop out. I think there are a lot of Democrats, not even just young Democrats that they always point to, that said, can't we have someone in there a little younger? And I think Mamdani fit that mold, and it's helping to reshape the Democrat Party, and not, in my opinion, for their better. He's drawn fire. This is Mamdani for for not condemning the phrase globalized intifada. We can go through all of this. But for some reason, it's Republicans' fault that Mamdani is now one of the faces of the Democrat Party. But Liz Peek says that is going to be a disaster for the Democrats. We'll talk about that when we come back. And just looking at the time, I see some waves, see some comments coming in. Don't forget, coming up right around 7:20, we're going to be talking with Daniel Cain. He's running for Elmira City Court Judge. We had his opponents on, Robert Singlin, Jordan York. They were on earlier last week, I think it was. Throughout the week, it doesn't matter the exact date. But you can find that on YouTube, and you can find it on our website, wydc-tv.com, if you want to catch up and be prepared for either early voting or for Tuesday to learn about your candidates. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street Recording. A lot of viewer comments coming in. Let's get right to them. Ken writes in, with Trump term limited out in 2028, and literally no one in the Republican wings that would be willing to take the incessant onslaught from the Democrats or able to achieve and hold on to the gains Trump is making for America, I have one hope for the country. I hope that the Democrats stay on course with pushing socialism, keeping the country shut down longer, keep up the crazy rhetoric, and keep propping up criminals. If they stay the course then they are on, literally any Republican can be elected president in 2028. If the Democrats are thinking people, I wouldn't be comfortable saying this out loud, but I think we all know they meet Freud's definition of insanity, so they won't change. Thank you, Ken. Well, they seem to be embracing with Mamdani, and we'll see in the midterms next year the more radical wing of their party, right? We saw it in full force during the anti-Israel protests as well. Thank you, Ken. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning. Well, good morning. Business friendly, yes. Politico called Governor Hochul moderate, business-friendly politician. Tell that to the gas companies, to all the overtaxed businesses. Great job, Hochul. Keep up the good work and watch your constituents bump into one another as they scramble to leave this state for greener pastures. Thank you very much. And to your point with the green energy programs, think about that in January or the end of December when you can no longer build a business that the whole business isn't electric. Extra cost. Why would they think of coming here? Comment from a different viewer. Concerning the New York City election, Trump has exposed a lot of things. Now the Republican Party has been exposed. Where is the Republican Party? Why aren't they standing with Sliwa? He's the Republican candidate. The people have spoken, and the Republican Party says no. Yeah, there has been some that have called for Republicans to vote for Cuomo. I don't think the party, if you look at the county chairs in New York City, the Republican county chairs, they have stayed the course and stayed with their endorsement of Sliwa, and so they fully support him. I think it's more of a kind of a media, more of some of the talking heads that don't support him. I don't think Republicans normally budget too much money for New York City races, and I'm not sure how much he fundraised himself. So I think one of Sliwa's biggest problems has been from the beginning is he's the guy that always runs, right? He ran against Eric Adams, et cetera. And Republicans are happy to have him because you, of course, want a Republican to vie for the opportunity to be mayor. But I think it was an example of just a perfect storm of bad where former Governor Cuomo just did not campaign properly in the primary, lost to socialists, and everybody looked around and said, uh-oh, what can we do? I'm with you. I think it is going to be very hard for any Republican in New York City to hold their nose, as they always say, and vote for Cuomo. If it was anybody, I think if Adams was still in there, I could see people voting for Adams before Cuomo. I just think that's a bridge too far. But yes, I wouldn't blame all Republicans. I blame certain Republicans, but I wouldn't blame all Republicans. I think the committees have been fine. I think they've been very supportive of Sliwa. I don't think he's getting a lot of attention, though. And I think that's part on purpose and part Sliwa having ran so many times, having that issue. Now, Liz Peek Do I have time for this? I don't have time for this because we got our interview coming up. We are going to talk about Kathy Hochul. Kathy Hochul swearing that Zoran wants to endorse her. I haven't asked him for his endorsement. That's the only reason he hasn't. They want to know my timeline. Let's get through this election. Let's focus on your race. I have a lot of time to roll out my endorsements. So she is endorsing herself by Zoran Mamdani, saying, oh, no, he wants to. Well, then why didn't he? You shouldn't speak for him on what he does or doesn't want to do on that scenario. If he wanted to endorse you, that would have happened when he was directly asked in the mayoral debate. So to try to save face, this is what I mean. She's just not to that level. Trying to save face and say, well, no, he wants to, but it's on me. We got to figure out the timeline, but we want to get him across the finish line now. Then we'll focus on my endorsements. I hope someone, they won't. I hope someone asks, is it really on her timeline? You're going to endorse her, like she said. It's just a matter of her timeline. Is that right, Mr. Mamdani? I would love to hear that answer. We got to take a break. Coming up, Daniel Cain after this. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and in that studio, we have Daniel Cain running for Elmira City Court Judge. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
We've got a lot to talk about. Let's start with the easiest. Tell us about your background.
Sure. So I'm a local kid from this area. Had graduated, got my bachelor's degree from Geneseo. Okay. Went to law school in Philadelphia, Temple University. Then my wife and I made the decision to move back, to move back to this area, and started my career here 20 years ago, and we've been here ever since. Raised our family here, and like I said, been here working and living in the community ever since. Well, obviously you have family and you have a job and you have responsibilities. So why did you take the time? Because it is a lot of work. People don't realize to run. Right. So I've not been politically active, right? So I always vote. I'm obviously I think that's important, and I'm engaged in that level. But in terms of seeking political office, not something that I've ever done before. So It's new to me. So I think for me it was kind of a matter of looking around and thinking to myself, what can I do? And so, running for Senate or running for governor isn't something really in the cards, but running for local office and that's what drove me to it. And I think there's a real benefit to running for local office. There's a lot that you can do and a lot of experiences that you can have that maybe you wouldn't be able to have with some of those other offices. Getting to engage with the voters, and so many of them. With your neighbors. Right. I mean, exactly. Really, people, and I know everybody focuses on the national level talk and like that, but when it comes to local, nothing affects your life on a day-to-day basis more than the local races. Exactly. And that's why we'll be asking you about voter turnout later. Right. But before that, if people aren't familiar with the role and responsibility of Elmira City Court Judge, what does that look like? So there's a lot of different roles. So I think a lot of times people immediately will go to the criminal end of it. Sure. And so that's one end where you have misdemeanor criminal cases, and then earlier in the proceedings, felony level, the preliminary matters for those. But there's a lot of other things, civil cases, landlord-tenant, code issues, animal control, all the way down to vehicle and traffic and so forth. So there's a lot of ways that, outside of just those criminal proceedings, a lot of ways that Elmira City Court can affect the lives of the people living in the city of Elmira. And it should also be noted, I know I've mentioned it on every interview, and we talk about how important the local races are. This is a 10-year term. Right. So you can't take that lightly. Right, exactly. That's a lot of responsibility, too, on your side, right? Hopefully you like it if you win, right? Right. So you have to think long and hard, especially for someone like me who hasn't run for political office before. It is a large commitment, but the way that I look at it is that this is the city that we live in as a family. It's the city we raise our children in. It's a city that we're invested in. So this is, kind of I think my deciding to run was based upon that. And you mentioned you're not necessarily a political person, though you vote. How's the campaign been going? Is there any surprises since you're new to it? No, because you don't really know, what to expect necessarily sometimes with that. So I guess the one surprise, It's hard. You work during the day, and then you have we've got 4 kids.
Yeah, right.
So we've got to get them, make sure they're getting where they need to be. So then you go out there and you're walking door to door. So always getting out there is a bit of a challenge to do it. But once you're out there, the doors that open, at least, I think I've been positively surprised at how positive it's been, how oftentimes people are engaged in the conversation, even sometimes people who didn't know there was a city court judge race before me knocking on the door and talking to them.
Isn't it unique, because I've said this a million times on this program, but you learn about things that you may not even been aware of in your community from the residents. What it matters to them may not be what matters to the person next door to them, or to you for that matter.
Exactly right. And that gives a perspective too, kind of on the different areas that a city court judge is might have come across their desk because of that. Because some people, it might be issues with landlord tenants, some issues it might be code issues and so forth. So that's very true.
How have the conversations been going? What are people saying?
So I think a lot of times the conversations are going well, and I think a lot of times it's people who want to know me, want to know my background, and the nice thing about a local race, very rarely do you get asked a question in terms of your political party.
Right.
It's the question is kind of what's my experience, what do I feel like I can bring to the job, and then sometimes about my background, and sometimes that's a nice part of it, because you meet someone who I've never met before, but maybe they knew my mother from working at St. Joseph's Hospital, or my wife or my father. Even I've had people, my grandfather passed away when I was 1. I've had people ask about him. Wow. So that part of it is neat.
It is, having the conversation, and it's refreshing when people are so informed on their local community. It's heartwarming, because I take out petitions, and just to hear that people actually do follow it, right. You're not always sure. So it is, but it's definitely a different kind of animal, isn't it?
Right, for sure.
It's fun. And you mentioned that about political party, not necessarily political issues. It's interesting when it comes to a judicial race, and some people may wonder why the questions are always very similar. There's only some things I can ask you, some things I can't. And that's not just you, that's any judicial candidate. But for this couple of months, 1, 2, 3, 4 months that you can campaign, you have to be political, you have to have a party. And then if you win, you've got 10 years where you can't be political at all. Isn't it kind of bonkers?
Right. It is strange. And I mean, I get removing it from, when you're on the bench, removing politics from it.
Course.
But it is that dichotomy where now you're out there kind of campaigning. But the one thing that was important to me, and that really I'm quite proud of, is the amount of support that we've got across party lines.
Yeah.
So not just from kind of people out in the community talking to, but also people working on my campaign. Yeah. It really truly is a cross section. Those people helping me are a cross section of the political spectrum.
Well, and I saw you have quite a few endorsements on your website. That always, it has to feel good.
Yes.
You know what I mean? When people go out of their way to endorse you, I don't always ask that question, but I saw that you had quite a few, so that's great. What issues do you see that you'll have to focus on specifically if you become judge? I don't mean about the responsibility of the job, but looking ahead to 10 years of this, what do you expect? So
I think that you've got so many different areas that you're dealing with. So obviously, a large portion of city court is kind of the criminal caseload that goes in front of you, and a lot of people are talking about issues with that, whether it be concerns with, drugs or violence in our communities. It's a community that I live in too, so I'm not certainly blind to that. It's going to be, you've got landlord-tenant.
It's going to be huge, right?
Right.
Yeah.
For that, and then code issues, and so I mean, really, it runs the gamut, because it's a court with so much volume that handles so many different kinds of cases. So I'm just ready to jump in there, listen to folks, and then try to resolve some of these issues as best as we can.
Now, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but how do you plan? How are you preparing to get out the vote on Election Day? Now, early voting has started. If people aren't aware, it's very important to know that. I know it sounds like there's been good turnout, but that doesn't mean. A lot of people like to wait till the day and get the sticker and all that. Right. How are you going to try to get the voter turnout?
Right. So part of it's been door to door, going out and meeting as many people as we can, and it's hard because it's a lot of times people aren't home or what have you, and there's a lot of
it gets dark so quick now too.
Right. That's been a huge obstacle. And the days are getting shorter, obviously. Yeah. So, but that's been a large part of it. And then obviously we have presence on Facebook and our website
Sure.
and so forth, the endorsements that you mentioned, and just really lucky, grateful to have the people that kind of behind me that are helping me put out that word to let folks know, first of all, there is this election coming up, and to, for those people to say, and this is why I think Dan's the best person for the job.
Well, and that's why I like the idea of early voting, especially for races like this, because instead of waiting, you know how it is, it's a late day, you're at work and you forget on election day, just go now when you have a couple minutes, go vote, because there's not going to be a line.
Exactly, right.
Get it over with so you don't forget, if nothing else.
Right.
Because there just isn't the beating of the drum to tell everybody get out and vote in a local election year, an off-season year like this.
Right.
So you mentioned the website, the Facebook. Is that the best place to find out more about you and get involved if they want to help?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. We got Cain 4, the number 4, citycourt.com is the website. And then the Facebook, I'll read it to make sure I get it right. Elect Daniel Cain for Elmira City Court Judge.
Well, I was just looking at our camera screen. In the back, there was a car shining. It almost looks like you have a halo on you. So I don't know what that says, but I apologize. It's very bright behind you. So before we go, what would you say to voters before they head to the booth?
So I think to look at my experience, and I think the wide breadth of experience that I have. So I think right now I'm a court attorney, principal court attorney in Chemung County Court. So I've got that experience from the other side of the bench. But the biggest thing I, even more than that, try to hammer home is that 18 years before that, I was a privately practicing attorney. So, what do I do with that? I sit across the desk from people, I listen to them, and then try to find resolutions to whatever issues they might have. And that's exactly what a city court judge is going to need to do. And one of the, I've been in front of countless judges in so many different courts for over the years, from city court to county to state supreme to local courts. And so people sometimes say, what kind of, when you're looking at judges, what are you looking for? And it sounds so simple, but it's someone who listens, who's going to listen, and that's what I want to do. Listen, I want to use my knowledge, my experience, and then apply the law. We're judges. We're not setting policy.
Right. Our
job is to apply the law and to apply it fairly. So that's what I look forward to do, and that's what I would plan on doing.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for being on the program this morning. Best of luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you again to Daniel Cain for being on the broadcast this morning. Did you stay up for all 18 innings of the World Series right here on Big Fox? I'd love to hear from you. How is your morning going thus far? Let's go to some viewer comments. So why is it okay to say they should tax corporations and tax the rich, yet they decide who gets tax breaks for green energy and other things that are on their agenda instead of giving money to truly new innovations? Thank you very much. Kind of in line with that, Ken writes in, Frank, I think you're misunderstanding the Democrats' definition of business friendly. Because if you're just joining us, there was a piece yesterday at Politico that said that Governor Hochul was moderate and business friendly. Ken says the businesses that Democrats are friendly to are businesses involved in solar power, wind power, pharmaceuticals, health insurance, and any other business that they can funnel money to so they can get kickbacks in the form of campaign donations, early investment opportunities, and clandestine gifts. Thank you, Ken. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning to you. Hochul makes excuses for Zoran not endorsing her. They sound like a wife in a bad marriage dismissing her husband's indiscretions. Thank you for mentioning early voting. I voted yesterday. Oh, good for you. How'd it go? It's a kind of a neat. I did it last year during the presidential, just because we were encouraged to do so. I thought I'd give it a shot. I thought it would be a very pleasant experience. Okay, if you did not hear me quote Governor Hochul, Governor Hochul said when asked about her endorsing Mamdani, doing rallies with Mamdani, but every time he's been asked, he will not endorse, whether by reporter or at that mayoral debate. She said, I haven't asked him for his endorsement. That's the only reason he hasn't. They want to know my timeline. Let's get through this election. Let's the focus be on your race. I have a lot of time to roll out my endorsements. So she's endorsing herself for Zohran Mamdani in this scenario. Again, a reporter should ask Mr. Mamdani if that means that he will endorse her. Not now, you don't have to do this second, but will you be endorsing her at some point in her time frame, not yours? So some of the things that Governor Hochul, again, you've heard me state my beliefs on her level of performance when it comes to governor. She wants to make clear Mamdani is actually waiting in the wings to endorse her, whom Mamdani had once called disgusting. Yes, he once called Hochul disgusting. 2, the question of raising income taxes to fund Mamdani's agenda, which used to be a non-starter for Hochul, is now the subject of discussion. And any bitterness between Mamdani supporters and Hochul over her prior opposition to raising taxes could be mistaken for "Let's go Bills." Yes, she said, I couldn't hear what they were chanting. I thought they were saying "Let's go Bills" at the rally in New York City. I wasn't sure. I heard some noise. I heard a lot of cheers, but later on it became clear to me. I know there's a passion for that, meaning a passion for taxing the rich. So the Democrat governor's awkward appearance Sunday at the New York is Not for Sale rally, which featured AOC, Bernie Sanders, highlighted an uncomfortable divide in the party. Hochul held off on endorsing Mamdani as a mayor for months after a stunning primary win, but then, of course, endorsed, and he has now twice said he will not, or has not agreed to endorse. I think signaling that even though she endorsed him, there could be a far-left challenger for governor. So again, he wants to endorse me. He wants to endorse me, but it's on my timeline. I said, focus on your own race. So essentially, putting words in his mouth of endorsing her to save face, I don't even think she thinks that far in advance. And also, she didn't hear tax the rich. She heard "Let's go Bills." Tax the rich, let's go Bills. They don't sound similar to me, but to Hochul, they do. So the New York Post editorial board said, what a humiliation. Governor Hochul opted to take the stage at Sunday's rally for Zohran Mamdani and wound up serving as the warm-up act for socialist icons, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders, except even that blew up in her face. The crowd greeted her with boos, jeers, and taunts of tax the rich, and all the governor could do was grin and bear it. She wants to be a kingmaker. She wants to be in that inner circle so bad, and she never has it. It got so bad that Mamdani had to take the stage to rescue her, grabbing her arm, throwing their joined arms upward, and walking her off to applause. Applause for him. She tried to pass off the humiliation with a joke. I thought they were saying, "Let's go Bills," she claimed. Shades, as one viewer pointed out earlier in the broadcast, shades of "Let's go Brandon." She wanted to, quote, harvest all the energy. And again, grinning, Hochul told reporters to be on the same team and to make sure that we can do a lot of great things for the people of the state. What she wants is for the energy to not be turned against her in next year's Democratic primary and for those jeering young socialists and progressives to show up for her in the November election. Sadder still, she's pretending that Mamdani hasn't yet endorsed her for re-election because she hasn't asked him yet, when he plainly expects to make her work for it. Most of his tax hiking, big spending agenda is toast if he can't get the state to do his bidding. He made it obvious last month after she endorsed him when he pointedly declined to return the favor. The 10,000 screaming socialists in Queens on Sunday have little use for regular Democrats trying to clamber on board the Mamdani bandwagon. But what use will she be for anyone else at this point? She's held on so far as a centrist to somewhat restrain the raging progressives who dominate the legislature. New Yorkers who fear Mamdani's agenda have been hoping she'll refuse to play ball if he wins on Tuesday. The governor plays her cards very close. We'll hold out some hope that her happy face on Monday was a pose. Hochul should take the Forest Hills rally to heart. These radicals aren't her friends, and the silent majority wants her to stand up to them. If Mamdani wins, don't give him what he wants. He'll never, clearly, return the favor. Now, Liz Peek says that Hakeem Jeffries have made it official. Zohran Mamdani, anti-Semitic socialist, is now the face of the Democrat Party. Democrats are in trouble. Having your party hijacked by far-left fanatics is okay in New York and a couple of other progressive hotbed states like California or Washington. But for the most of the country, the idea that a 34-year-old Zohran Mamdani with zero work experience could become the mayor of New York City, the citadel of capitalism, is horrifying. That House Minority Leader Jeffries, one of the Democrats' top officials, endorsed the absurd Mamdani, will haunt the party. Only 26% of the country describe themselves as liberal or very liberal. Some 32% said they are moderate, and the balance, 33%, describe themselves as conservative or very conservative. In other words, the leftists now directing the Democrat Party are putting all their eggs in one very small basket and risk alienating nearly 2/3 of Americans. That is truly terrible marketing plan. Just ask the makers of Bud Light. Now, I don't want to go through all this because it is a 3-page piece. You can find it at Fox News, Liz Peek. It's a good piece. But she wraps up by saying, yes, the far left will succeed in New York or California where Democrats far outnumber Republicans. But of the 8 House seats currently held by Republicans that are considered toss-ups by the Cook Political Report and that the Democrats are targeting, none is in New York or the Golden State. They are in states like Iowa, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, where voters are probably not too keen on socialism or anti-Semitism. That's why election experts say the midterms, which usually favor the party out of power, look evenly matched, and control of the House is a toss-up. Speaking of Governor Hochul, she said that the climate crisis has become too expensive to address in time. This, unhappy with the recent Albany County Supreme Court justice's ruling, said the state may need to modify its landmark climate law because it has become too expensive to follow. Wow, who could have guessed? The governor's reaction was in response to that ruling that forces the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to issue regulations to ensure that the state meets its greenhouse gas reduction goals. And that was all from the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act back in 2019. Hochul expressed her displeasure in the ruling in a statement to the Buffalo News, saying, "My job is to ensure we have enough power to keep the lights on, keep rates affordable, and attract major economic development projects. New York has been and will continue to be a leader in climate action, but the judge's decision fails to factor in the realities of today that include a federal government hostile to clean energy projects." Yes, of course, it's Trump. The continuing impacts of post-COVID high inflation and potential energy shortages expected downstate as soon as next year. We plan to review all our options, including working with the legislature to modify the CLCPA and appeal in order to protect New Yorkers from higher costs. Of course, we must invest in energy affordability. We must also invest in urgency for a holistic solution to the climate crisis and its direct and residential impacts to frontline communities. Everyday working class people are not intimidated by the struggle for justice. Likewise, we need our elected officials to stand firm on the law, said Don Wells Clyburn, executive director of Push Buffalo. So just not affordable. Who could have guessed it? All right, we got some things. We're getting ready to wrap up. Oh, also, Governor Hochul has announced $30 million in emergency food funds days before SNAP benefits are set to run out. SNAP benefits set to run out on November the 1st. So Governor Hochul has announced $30 million in emergency food funds. Not sure where that's coming from. Earlier this month, the federal government directed states to withhold issuing SNAP benefits for the month of November unless the government shutdown has been resolved. That means nearly 3 million New York residents who receive SNAP benefits could lose access to them beginning November the 1st. With that in mind, Governor Hochul announced yesterday that she is fast-tracking $30 million in state funds to support more than 16 million meals, with the governor noting that this would be the first time in U.S. history that a federal administration has halted food assistance during a government shutdown. Hochul saying, "I'm doing everything in my power to soften the blow of the destruction Republicans in Washington are inflicting on our state. While I've said repeatedly that no state can backfill these devastating cuts, I'm committed to ensuring New Yorkers do not go hungry this holiday season and taking action to support the families suffering the consequences of Republicans' cruelty." All right. Now, earlier this month, Representative Nicole Malliotakis called on Senator Chuck Schumer and Kristen Gillibrand to deliver the votes necessary to end the government shutdown, which began October 1st. All right. Well, it is on Schumer. But we got to take a break. Getting ready to wrap up. Wow. It's moving fast. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go to some viewer comments, shall we? Rick writes in a response to yesterday's Trump supporter questioning him about who he would vote for. He said, no on Mamadani, no experience. No on Gavin Newsom, potty mouth like Trump. SpongeBob gets my vote. He lives in a pineapple under the sea. Well, that's true. You can't send warships out to kill people without the approval of Congress. Consult with your lawmakers, not just Pete the Leak. I would love to see this administration get after the drug lords, but do it right. Have a plan for a change or it won't last. The drug trafficking will just change hands and keep going. I keep hearing Trump wants to run in 28. Well, part of the 22nd Amendment, don't they understand? They do what they want anyway. He breaks every law on the books and no one has the intestinal fortitude to do anything about it. My wish is he buys a boogie board and heads back to Mar-a-Lago. That'll be a big day, bigger than anyone has ever seen before. Have a great week all. Thank you, Rick. Comment from a different viewer. Question, doesn't Mamadani have ties? Well, so there was ties to that one imam who was an unindicted, alleged to be an unindicted conspirator in the World Trade Center bombing. I don't know anything more about his past in that direction. I think I heard something about this viewer said. So if Mamadani wins, I have to ask, who are the people who are voting for him? Is the Muslim population that big in New York City? No, it's younger people. It's the people in the Democrat Party who have jumped onto the kind of radicalized wing of the party. The AOCs, the Bernie Sanders. It's people. And it's not the easiest to say, but it's people in the Democrat Party who said they didn't like the age of Joe Biden and what that led to. They don't like Chuck Schumer. They don't think he's done enough at his age, that he's not doing enough to fight Trump. And so they see someone that's young, that is being reported as charismatic, and I think it's really that. I don't think there's anything more to read into it. It's the Democrat Party going in that direction. Mark writes in, Mamadani didn't endorse Hochul. I wonder if Frankie Focus did. Thank you very much. I'm sure Frankie Focus gave his full endorsement to Hochul, considering it's Hochul's brainchild, and who knows how much we paid for that as taxpayers. If you don't know Frankie Focus, that was the mascot to get younger people, students, to accept the fact they could no longer have cell phones in schools, but yet cater to a generation that the cell phones aren't the most important thing as it is with a teenager. So it was kind of weird right from the beginning. Ken writes in, Mamadani might actually get some Republican votes in New York City if he recants his past comment that Hochul is disgusting. Thank you very much, Ken. And Sergeant Dave writes in, morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Sergeant Dave. Do you think down the line the Democrat Party will split in half, or do you think they will all go socialism? That's a great question, because you figure Hakeem Jeffries endorsed Mamadani, so it seems like they're starting to embrace that. If you recall, and I'm not even saying this to mock him, I can't remember the leader of the Democrat National Convention, or Democrat National Committee, excuse me, who ironically complained that no one remembers who he is, that he's not getting the attention he deserves. But he said, when asked about Mamadani's past anti-Semitic comments, he said, we're a big tent. We want to get as many people in as we possibly can. So it does not seem to be a problem. Now, a viewer had mentioned this. We got to take a break. We're going to wrap up the program. Get your last minute comments in. We're going to go fast right here at the end. So stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Comment from a viewer. I believe that Trump could make the climate crisis completely go away if he got donors to fund the climate crisis. If Trump said it was a crisis, the crisis would be a thing of the past. That's very true. All right, Dick Durbin said that and he's the number 2 highest ranking Democrat in the United States Senate, admitted that the American Federation of Government Employees Union calling for an end to the government shutdown had a big impact. He said, Senator Durbin, number 2 Democrat, says AFGE calling for end to shutdown has a lot of impact. It's something we will be discussing this week. I'm not announcing any changes in my position at this time. They're our friends. We take them seriously. And he says he supports bills to pay SNAP and air traffic controllers, but they fought that in the past. but they're signaling a message at the mainstream media that this better not cause Democrats to waver because they want the more radicalized agenda. At CNN, they're saying Democrats not swayed by a call to end the shutdown from the largest federal workers union, even though Dick Durbin said that did have a lot of impact. So not swayed. Democrats appear to be unmoved by fresh demands from the largest federal employees union to reopen the government, a sign that the shutdown stalemate between lawmakers will continue as government workers increasingly feel the pain during the process. But it is interesting, the mainstream media not knowing how to completely report that, because normally they would have blamed it completely in the headline on Republicans, but in this case, admitting that the Democrats could end that shutdown at any moment. The New York Post even asking, when will Democrats get back in touch with reality on this? Mind you, Democrats lost the last election because most voters saw them as captive to the party's increasingly weird elites. Yet now they're doubling down on that same behavior. Do they want to keep losing? That is a question the New York Post asks. Well, I want to thank Daniel Cain for being on the program this morning. He is running for Elmira City Court Judge. We had his opponents on, both Robert Siglin and Jordan York, last week. So you now have the opportunity to hear from all three candidates in that very important race. Remember, it's a 10-year term. So that is on our website, wydc-tv.com. It's also on our YouTube page. You can watch them there. So you are ready to go vote in that booth on either election day or if you are going to early vote. So we appreciate them being on the program. On tomorrow's show, we're going to be talking live in studio with Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard, so don't miss that and get your questions in ahead of time. And on Thursday, former Congressman and current New York State Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski will be joining us. It's been a little while since we talked to Joe, but we look forward to it. Got a lot of catching up to do. Have a great day, everyone, and join us every weekday morning starting at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV Big Fox. We'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. If you watched the full World Series game, all 18 innings last night, get some good rest, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. I look forward to it already.